generations to come.
Welcome to another edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the TDN and co-host of the Down the Stretch radio show on Sirius XM Radio.
Hey, you guys, or check that. Hi, y'all. I'm Randy Moss with NBC Sports.
Zoe Cadman here with First TV and First Racing. Delighted to be here on a fabulous Tuesday.
I just want to mention Alex Bregman is a big horse owner. If he happens to be watching this, we're 1-5 or 1-4. What's going on, Alex? You got to kick some butt, okay, and get my team back into the proverbial winner's circle. So, I wonder if I bet you he is watching this. So he's such a dedicated horse owner. So that's a little message from the peanut gallery here. Okay, so a lot going on last weekend, a lot going on this weekend coming up, as this is the final 2 weekends for the for the Kentucky Derby prep. So why don't we start down at Gulfstream, where Tapit Street won over Sovereignty by a length and a quarter. I think Brad Cox has done a really good job with this horse. He took his chance passing the Fountain of Youth, but he obviously knew what he was doing. He had the horse ready to run a lifetime best race in the Florida Derby, and it really looks like he's improving coming into the race. Randy, I know you and Jerry Bailey were talking about on the show whether, who would you ride, him or Sovereignty, if you had a choice between the two. To me, that's an easy question. Tapit Street. Sovereignty didn't run poorly by any stretch of the imagination, but I think he was just second best in that spot. What did you think? I
would still ride Sovereignty if I was a jockey agent and I had a choice between the two, going a mile and a quarter at Churchill Downs. I think I would still take Sovereignty. But Brad Cox told us before the race that he thought the horse had mentally and physically improved. Trainers say that all the time. You have to take that sort of thing with a grain of salt. But that's what I saw from Tapit Street, and primarily in this area. And Zoe would know more about this than I would. Tapit Street was the kind of horse before Saturday that jockeys always, in their vernacular, say you got to ride him like you're riding a bicycle. Okay. If you stop riding him, he'll stop running. You got to constantly be riding him. And sure enough, in all of his races before the Florida Derby, the jockey's on his belly going into the second turn and all the way around the second turn, being hard ridden to get to where he's at. You didn't see that necessarily in the Florida Derby. He was much more involved on his own, with the jockey not having to really ask him to go. And I thought that was an improvement. But 94 Beyer speed figure, even though, he is going in the right direction, that still, to me, in my mind at least, makes Tapit Street, 10-1, 12-1 or so right now for the Kentucky Derby. I was a little disappointed in Sovereignty. I expected to move forward, given the longer stretch than he had in the Fountain of Youth, given his second start after a layoff. But then you think about it, Zoe, Bill Mott always has his horses keyed after a layoff. That's his MO. They're always ready, always at their peak performance coming off a layoff. And so it might have been a little erroneous to expect a big step forward in Sovereignty's second out. But I think I'm not giving up on him yet as a Kentucky Derby hopeful.
Me neither. I thought he ran a very good race, did Sovereignty, and let's just not forget that Manny Franco doesn't know him nearly as well as Junior Alvarado. The thing I'd noted about Sovereignty in the race before was the fact that he doesn't love the kickback, and he didn't get that much of a chance to get free of it. Once he's clear of the kickback, he'll really come running. And I think if Manny had maybe known that or been a little bit more cognizant and got him clearer a little bit earlier, that might have made the difference, because I have a feeling that he just doesn't like it. Once he switches leads, you can see that big galloping stride. So while it was maybe a little bit disappointing, I believe he'll still move forward off that. Tapit Street was great. Great to see Luis Saez winning the Florida Derby. I read T.D. Thornton's bit in the TDN about the Florida Derby and its stepping stone towards the Kentucky Derby. 73 renewals. The runners of the Florida Derby have won the Kentucky Derby 25 times. That's about a 1 in 3 shot. 15 of the winners of the Florida Derby have come back to win the Kentucky Derby. So it's a really good stepping stone. It was a good race.
So let me ask you this. If your theory is correct and Sovereignty doesn't do well in kickback, how's he going to avoid kickback in a 20-horse Kentucky Derby?
I don't know how he's going to do it. I don't know. But I do know he does have a long sustained run, and he's going to have to make it from the 3/8 pole and get clear. So if he can do that, maybe he's got a shot. We all know he's probably going to have to run 1 mile and 3/8 to avoid the kickback, which I don't think is going to be a problem for him. But maybe he's going to wake up markedly and be a little bit closer in his next start. I'm not sure, but that is my theory, and I'm sticking with it.
So the Gulfstream Park Oaks is the prep on the card at Gulfstream for the Kentucky Oaks. 5G, very nice horse, big favorite, wired the field by 2 1/4. She'll go into the Kentucky Oaks as one of the top 3 or 4 favorites, I would imagine. The only thing I wonder about her, and I liked her race, but I don't want to take anything away from it, but she got a pretty easy trip. There was a small field. She got to the front in 23 3 and then the half in 47. I don't remember the name of the horse. The horse that ran second was kind of, dogging her a little bit. But she's not going to get that kind of trip in the Kentucky Oaks. It doesn't mean she can't, win with a tougher trip. But I just thought that the way that race developed, it kind of fell into her lap. Zoe?
Good race. I was a little against her, maybe coming off of that Oaklawn trip. But I thought she ran great. Was it outstanding? No, but it's enough to get her to the Kentucky Oaks. So wishing the Gatz's family the best of luck with her. And she'll get a little bit more time now in between. And, well, she's still got a ship. But, good race.
Yeah, I mean, in her last start in the Honeybee Stakes at Oaklawn, she and Quietside both had far outside post positions. They both had to be used a lot more early than they would ordinarily be to get over going a mile and a 16th to keep from getting caught wide. And she made it to the lead and still held on pretty gamely to be beaten just a length by Quietside last time. We'll talk about Quietside in a second. And here she controls the pace in much easier fractions. 90 Buyer's speed figure. That compares to 91 for Good Cheer in the Fairgrounds Oaks. So on the surface, it was a good race. But like Bill said, I mean, you've got Simply Joking. You'll have some other horses in the Kentucky Oaks with speed. So she's probably not going to get this easy of a time on the front end in Louisville.
So the Arkansas Derby, as we turn our attention to Oaklawn Park, was won by Sandman, and the co-owner Len Green will be joining us shortly on the Gainesway Guest of the Week segment. The story of the race was the trip and this insane speed duel between Cornucopian and Speed King, John Velasquez on Cornucopian and Rafael Bejarano on Speed King. The fractions were 22 and change, 45 and change. They were a mile ahead of the rest of the field. And as you'd expect, they'd hit a brick wall. You wouldn't expect this from, Velasquez is a Hall of Famer. Bejarano is a very accomplished jockey. I don't know what was going through their mind, but that set the race up perfectly for a horse to come from behind. That horse happened to be Sandman, who, by the way, was ridden for the first time by Jose Ortiz, which also might have made a difference since he is just winning everything in sight. And Zoe, I won't put you on the saddle on Cornucopian or Speed King. What should have been done to avoid that situation?
I'm going to let Randy go first. I want to hear a James McDonald. We'll see if we get a James McDonald rendition of this one.
Yeah, we know that Bob Baffert likes to get his horses out there. He doesn't like to overthink things when he thinks he has a really good horse. And of course, Cornucopian was coming off of a 6-furlong sprint, and he was going to show speed. In the chapter called "The Anatomy of a Suicidal Pace Duel," I think it comes down partially to trainer Ron Moquett of Speed King, who before the Rebel Stakes gave Rafael Bejarano instructions in the paddock to take back. Even though this horse has been a confirmed front runner, I want you to take him back. There's a lot of speed in there. Madaket Road's in there with Baffert. I want you to take him back, move inside, save ground. It was a disastrous strategy. And Moquett acknowledged that and said it was my fault. Said if Bejarano just hadn't listened to me, we might have been okay. And now I'm not going to say that to him again. I'm going to tell him just to go with it. And that's exactly what happened. I don't think Johnny V probably didn't think Speed King had that kind of early speed, but it was a true radioactive, suicidal pace battle and clearly set it up for Sandman. But I don't think you can really downgrade Sandman's effort that much because of the pace, because you typically get a quick pace in the Kentucky Derby as well. So I think you got to keep that in mind when you look at this race.
Yeah, you really do. It wasn't a Hall of Fame ride, in my opinion. Johnny was told to go, but at some point you have to acquiesce. Bejarano wasn't sending, he was sitting. I think maybe Johnny could have maybe eased off him after the first quarter. They just ran too hard, too early. Johnny was asked about the pace after the race, and he simply said, we went too fast, that's it. Turn the page, move on. So we'll see that horse, Cornucopian, who I believe is a very good horse, somewhere else. Sandman ran a great race. The really interesting thing I found, and a friend of mine pointed this out, the last 5/8 running times of the Florida Derby and the Arkansas Derby. Now, it was because of the pace.
Yes.
The last 5/8 of the Florida Derby were ran in 102.05. The last 5/8 of the Arkansas Derby, 104.87. That's a huge difference, but it's because of the suicidal pace. But I just thought that was just an interesting little note there for the last 5/8. But Sandman won it.
Yeah, anybody that studies pace and fractional times knows that when you get a race like the Arkansas Derby with that fast of a pace, okay, even though there was an 8 to 10 length gap between the top two and the rest of the field, it still drags along those come from behinders and makes them run a little faster than they ordinarily would. For example, Publisher was way back, right? The maiden of Aspences who finished second. He was 16 and a half lengths back after a half mile. Yet at the 3/4 mark, after 6 furlongs, Publisher had run 2 to 4 lengths faster, depending on which guideline you use, than Tappan Street in the Florida Derby. Publisher. And he was way out the back end in the Arkansas Derby. So, yeah, the pace, that's the primary reason for the slow closing fractions.
And listening to Lonnie Briley, Publisher, great. He's going to go to the Derby and Maiden. How awesome is that? But he's earned his way in. He's got more than enough points. Lonnie Briley was interviewed by Scott Hazelton from FanDuel, and he was great. He said, listen, I was trying to freshen him up, getting him to the race. I spaced his works out 9-10 days. This is what he's saying. And he was too fresh. And you could see when he broke, he was a fresher kind of horse than he's been before. His jockey, one of the less experienced jockeys, very good on that horse. But he chased that fast pace perhaps a little bit earlier. The 3/8 pole, he was moving like a winner, like he was just going to swallow them up and go on by. And he paid the price. So we'll see perhaps back to his regular training schedule. And I can't wait to watch and listen to Lonnie Briley in the weeks leading up to the Kentucky Derby. I'm crossing everything I have that he gets there because it is the most awesome story and he deserves every bit of it.
Yeah, it really is a cool story. I want to bring up one other thing about these two races. Tappan Street cost $1 million. Sandman, $1.2 million. And this pattern is emerging now. I remember back in the day, especially when the Arabs were spending big money at the sales, where if you spent huge money on a horse, it almost guaranteed that they wouldn't turn out to be any good. Whatever these guys are doing now, the bloodstock advisors and the Sharpies that go to these sales, they're getting really good at this because, you don't see too many of these horses are duds. Maybe some of them don't get to the racetrack and you don't know about it. But once again, $1 million for Tappan Street, 1.2 for Sandman. And, we've got Barnes coming up in the Anita Derby. What do you cost? 2.3 million?
Something. No.
Yeah. 3.2. Okay, I reversed that. So we'll be talking about that in a little bit. But I just thought that was interesting that, the rich are getting richer. All right. So in the fantasy, Quiet Side had 4 straight losses. And I'm sure the trainer, John Ortiz, was a little bit frustrated because she kept running very well, but just couldn't get the job done. Now she wins the Honeybee at Oaklawn Park and comes right back and wins the fantasy. It was a good race, a real game fight between Simply Joking, who hadn't been out for a while, and Quiet Side down the stretch. Both of them, I'm sure, will go to the Kentucky Oaks. I think they're going there with a chance, both of them.
I like Quiet Side moving forward. She won the battle. I honestly didn't realize until I read the article in the TDN that Johnny Ortiz was such a massive Star Wars fan. which I thought was really interesting. May the force be with him. And he comes out with all these Star Wars quotes now. It's fun. So Quiet Side won the battle, but it was a very good race, and the force is with her. I wasn't. My brother was a Star Wars fan, not me. I was Calamity Jane. Me
neither. Owner John Ed Anthony became the all-time leading stakes owner at Oaklawn Park. He's already easily the all-time leading owner, period, in races won. Quiet Side has run against Good Cheer once before. She was beaten 2.5 lengths, I think, in a stakes race at Churchill Downs last fall. I think she's gotten better since then, but you'd have to think that Good Cheer still, pending what we see from Tenma in the Santa Anita Derby this weekend, is still sort of the pro tempo leader of the 3-year-old filly division. Simply joking, though, you pointed out this was her first start in a while. She had to miss the Rachel Alexander because of a minor illness. So she might improve off of that effort as well going forward.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. Make plans to attend Keeneland's April Selected Horses of Racing Age sale, held in the right place at the right time. And that will be closing day of the Keeneland April Spring Meet. That's April the 25th, right after the races. Entries for the print catalog closed on Tuesday, but supplements will be considered until the sales date.
Leslie's Rose, Sierra, Leo.
Mike, $5 million. Thank you.
Carl Spackler, a Mercy. She feels pretty.
Now, this week's fastest horse of the week, brought to you by my boy, Two Phils, one of those fast sires at Windstar Farm. Two Phils was the first 3-year-old of his crop to record 3 consecutive 100-plus Beyer speed figures, including 105s in the Kentucky Derby and the Ohio Derby. That 105 ties for the fastest Kentucky Derby Beyer in the last 16 years. And here are 2 of the new foals, courtesy of Two Phils. A filly out of Super Gin. This was taken when she was at the tender age of 22 days. And a filly out of Sugar Sweet, and 2 more. Colt out of Afternoon Wedding, bred by Windstar, and a filly out of Lynn Low Lady. You go, Two Phils. He stands at Windstar Farm for a fee of $10,000. Now, the fastest horse of the week ran at Oaklawn Park, not in the Arkansas Derby, although a 99 Beyer speed figure for Sandman wasn't that bad, but in the Grade 3 Oaklawn Mile, run earlier on the card, one of the hottest horses at the Oaklawn meet, Banishing, defeated Saudi Crown after a nice stretch battle in that race. Banishing is on a run himself of triple-digit Beyer speed figures. He's good short. He's good longer. He wins here at a mile with a Beyer speed figure of 102. Banishing, our fastest horse of the week, owned by Larry Roman, trained by David Jacobson.
Welcome in now the Gainesway Guest of the Week, Len Green. Len, how are you? Have you had a great weekend?
Hey, had a great weekend, and it's great to be back with you guys. It's the top of the world.
Well, of course, you're on top of the world because of Sandman winning the Arkansas Derby. And Len, you're a guy you've been in racing many, many years, had a lot of good horses. You've run in the Derby before, but you've never had a Derby horse like this. Horse that's going to be maybe 3rd, 4th choice in the race. The very simple but basic question, how excited are you about this? And, are you going to bed every night dreaming of getting a Kentucky Derby win and having those roses draped over Sandman's neck?
Wouldn't it be great if I said yes? Okay. You have to keep things in proportion, as you know, Bill. And right now I'm working 8 days a week in tax season. Okay. So that's part of it. But number 2, I really believe that we did a strategy to try to get to this point in time, including, how to pick out the horse. I don't think any of these things just happen. I think you have to at least plan for them. Now, obviously, you have to have luck run you over, but there are just so many things that have happened along the way then you put the elements together. So yeah, I'm excited, but I'll be more excited when after we win the Derby. Okay, than I am now, kind of thing. But again, you guys all can understand this. You got to have somebody who shortlists the horse, and you got to have some friends and networking, because you can't necessarily buy a horse like this. And then you look at it and say, wait a second, the horse just galloped. And then you have to have somebody with a reputation like the Lomax who have a reputation of doing the right thing with the horse. And then, of course, it helps a little bit, Randy, to have a good trainer. Okay. But then you got to be able to have not only a good trainer, but when you mix people like West Point and you know, all the partners that we have on this thing, that it really is a very interesting mix of characters to get them all on the same page so that they all make the same decisions. And then who rides the horse? And then, I mean, Torres did a very, very wonderful job with it, but maybe we need a different kind of rider for this. And then, of course, it always helps when two horses go off in a speed duel and you're come from behind horse. And then you say to yourself, boy, we were smart, weren't we? So that's a long answer for you. But it really is, you know, it's the whole kind of thing. I mean, I still have not met Vinny Viola, but if it wasn't for him and CJ, we could not have done that. On the other hand, we set a limit on how much we're going to bid for the horse. And we statistically, you know, work our way through so that we would have the $1 million bid. So that usually knocks most people out. And somebody came back with $1.1 million. And everybody said, well, that's our last bid. I said, well, maybe it's your last bid. I kind of think $1.2 million might do it. Kind of knowing perfectly well that if you're going to buy a colt, okay, and you spend more than $500,000, it better win some kind of stake. And if you're going to spend $1 million, it better win a grade 1. So statistically, my mind's saying to myself, this is fool. But then I say to myself, come on, how many shots are we going to have at this?
I have a sneaking suspicion, Len, you're going to get to meet Vinny Viola in about 4 or 5 weeks in Louisville. So Sandman was always the kind of horse before Saturday that hinted at taking his game to the next level and really breaking through. But then things would happen. The Southwest, he broke badly from the gate. Then in the Rebel, he made a nice run, but just, you know, again, collecting all these points, running second and third, but then finally puts it all together. Was it difficult to keep from getting frustrated during that run up to the Arkansas Derby?
No, I actually have the TDN at the beginning of the year that Thornton says we are the number 2 candidate. So I kept on saying to Sandman, if you want your peppermint, you got to read this thing and get in your mind. It's about time. You know, we're running out of time. You know, have the race. Of course, Randy, going one step further though. As a trainer, okay, when Mark Cassidy says, "Let's take this route," and I say, "That's wonderful, Mark, as a strategy, but I don't see the races, and isn't part of this thing to enjoy the races and be there for them." And he says, well, you got to have faith. I said, I don't know. I said, do you have any credentials that show that you're a good trainer? But again, that route, the idea of going through Arkansas, okay, is turned to be a very, very good one. And I don't think we've seen the end of the best performance yet from Sandman. And so many times, as you know, okay, to qualify, you've got to really squeeze the horse to really, really win one of those races. I don't think we've squeezed the horse yet. So
you weren't at Oaklawn? Where did you watch the race from?
I actually went to Oaklawn.
Okay.
But I can't say that here on the podcast because my clients are going to say, I thought you were back doing our tax returns.
Surely they'll understand.
I don't know. You have to ask Joey.
All right, Len, I've got 2 questions for you. First off, what is going on with my computer? I've got balloons that came flying up. I'm not sure what's going on.
You're celebrating Sandman. That's
Exactly.
it.
My first
April
question
Fools.
is,
April Fool.
yeah, my first question, who is the Metallica fan? Because I love the song.
You know, it's interesting there too. Okay. What John Green does every year is he takes the list of the horse names that become available again. And we've been fortunate to buy about 40 horses a year, not 400, but 40 horses a year. So that we have a whole combination of names available so that when we actually do buy a horse, we can put it with him. And he just, I don't know why, but we said that's a Sandman for it, that he's going to be our Sandman.
Well, you're both Yankees fans, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you're going to tell us that because Rivera.
I'm going with the Metallica angle. Take my hand, we're off to Never Neverland.
Neverland.
All
We
right.
should play that when he
And I'll
walks
go with the
out.
Mariano Rivera angle then.
Yeah, they should play that when he walks out onto the track for the Kentucky Derby. The crowd would go absolutely crazy. That would be phenomenal. All right, second question.
So can we just stay with that just for a second? Okay. I know nothing about what you and Randy and Bill know about this horse racing business. I really have some expertise in some other area of the world. So what did impress me about it? Because all I did was gallop. But then we went over to see him, and he just stood there, and just the presence of it. And in the morning, he just does not seem to get excited. And Oaklawn, if you've ever saddled a horse at Oaklawn, I mean, it's so damn close that nothing bothers him. He can go down on one foot, okay, and suddenly spring up. And so again, there's a certain presence about him that I believe in.
Well, the University of Arkansas marching band didn't bother him either.
Yes. Yeah. You notice that? You were right on.
Oh,
Right
yeah,
on.
I noticed it.
So I love what Mark Cassie had to say, because someone said, well, how good is he? What about when he ducked out going down the stretch when Jose hit him left-handed?
Yep.
And Mark simply said, well, that just shows you how good he is. If he can goof around and win like that and duck out, not concentrating, imagine what he can do when he's focused.
Yeah, I mean, we bought some books for him, okay, and we're going to read it to him. And Zoe, what Jose did was I thought was fascinating too. I mean, take a minute of your time. 100 years ago, when I first started in the game, I said I wanted to know everything about it. So, and I want to give the instructions to the jockey. And so the first race, I sat down. I said, I've analyzed this whole thing. I want you to go 23 seconds. I want you to be on the inside. And he turned to me and said, "Si, senor." He didn't understand English. He didn't speak English. And so that when Jose came in, okay, and again, we picked Jose. Not that Torres did a bad job. He did a very good job. It just, we needed somebody with his experience and his strength. And he walked over and said, I've ridden a few races. In fact, I've won a few races. I know the track. Okay, and here's how I think I should run the race. So now it was great that he had 2 other speedballs go head to head to set it up, so everybody looks good, kind of thing. And as you guys know, okay, when the Derby comes and what place you're going to be in, and all the other luck and et cetera, kind of thing. But man, it's nice to be in this position. Now, I want TDN, when that new thing comes out, to have us up on top.
Len, it was a tough year off track for you as your wife Lois passed away. What will this mean to you if you win the Derby? Obviously, it'll be a big thrill, but will part of you have a little bit of sadness that you weren't able to share it with your wife?
Bill, I got to tell you, she's there with me. I think I would not be in this business if it wasn't for her and the encouragement. And then she made one very big decision. And again, please understand that in the real world, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm also a tax man, but I'm an entrepreneur. We have about 20 different companies, and I was fortunate enough to be involved in Blue Buffalo, et cetera, kind of thing. So I kind of think I'm a decent, smart type of person, kind of thing. And when John Green, who you know, came and said, you know what, I really would like to run the stable. And I said, no, I like to run the stable. I'm pretty smart. I analyze. John has done a phenomenal job. And Lois said to me, give him the stable to run and get out of the way. Okay. So it's been very interesting because there's a part of me that wants to make some of these decisions, and I'm a lot better off letting him do those types of things. So yeah, I really believe in that. And I also believe that we're going to give 10% of the earnings, to horse-related charities, because that's got to be part of it also, kind of thing.
Well, that's fantastic, Len. I mean, look, since we got you here, we got to ask you about taxes, obviously. And we could spend another hour talking about taxes, but let's distill it down, if you can, to a couple of things that you think now heading into this 2024 tax season that people in the thoroughbred industry need to be aware of and need to be focused on that maybe they might not be.
Thank you. Okay. We're fortunate in the sense now that you guys gave us the start, and now we have over 800 clients in the horse business. And I think that's partially because we have so many horses that we own, that we actually know the right answers as opposed to an accountant who just theoretically does it. So we see all the things that are happening. The biggest problems that we see is people still are owning horses individually and file Schedule C's or F's. Stupid. Okay. There should be a 2-person LLC that gives them the protection against liability, and it gives them a potload of more tax deductions than they can get as an individual. Number 2, a lot of people join partnerships, which is a phenomenal thing because you can spread the risk and you can get involved in better horses, etc. You can network with people, kind of thing. But they don't realize that they also get a big advantage, something called active versus passive. If you're active in the horse business and you lose money, you can take the deductions against every kind of income. If you're passive, you can very limited. But what do you have to do to be active? Well, normally it's 500 hours. But if you're part of a partnership, it's 100 hours. And then when you add watching your TDN, okay, you could fill that 100 hours very, very easily. You can be active. And so again, that's a real advantage, be able to take the deductions versus not. Plus the fact you get a chance to talk to trainers and other things. So that's another very, very big thing to do. And again, strategy-wise, you got to have strategy. You can lose money, but you got to have strategy. You can't say, hey, I'm doing the same thing year in and year out, and I'm losing money, and then try to explain to the IRS that this is a business. Nobody would be in business losing money every year without changing the strategy. So if you're losing money because you're claiming horses, well, then maybe go into buying horses. If you're losing that, maybe you want to go into pin hooking. But at least, or brute or mare, or eventually, there's so many different aspects of this game that you have a chance to make money on. And then if you really want to make money, okay, go ahead and win the Breeders' Cup the way we did a couple of times and sell the horse, or be a contender to the Derby, and you get all kinds of offers and things. I mean, it's a very easy game, right?
I love your last one, own a Sandman.
Own a Sandman really makes some sense. And again, own it with a, if you're going to go in a partnership, go into the partnership beforehand and say, hey, what if? What if we have to change trainers? What if we have to sell the horse? What if we have to decide on what farm? Let's have a system in place, okay? And even to the point of how do we split up the number of tickets that go into the paddock or into the winner's circle? Because you got to pre-plan these things, because there's no emotion if you pre-plan it before it happens. You try to do it now and say, well, who gets the right number of tickets and what have you? Well, West Point has 100 and some up. It doesn't work that way. So I guess what I'm saying is think about not only the present situation, but the future situation also, kind of thing. And again, from a tax point of view, if you're losing money every year, take a minute maybe and write this guy, Len Green, a note, because he does free consultations and he can probably point out some things that you're doing wrong.
And Len, what are the things that the IRS is currently examining?
Oh, the big one that you're doing right now is hobby losses. Before, Bill, it's a great question. You should be in this business for asking questions and things. How did I miss that one, right? The number one thing. Okay. The IRS used to, examine returns, and Biden hired a whole bunch of people so that they would figure that the horse people lost money, so they would disallow deductions. They've shifted. They said, why worry about disallowing deductions? Let's go after the hobby loss rules. Because if we can prove that you're in a hobby loss, well, then the income is still taxable, but zero of the deductions are allowed. That's a gold mine kind of thing. And you can, there's 9 tests, Mr. Internal Revenue Service person. And I think we hit, yeah, but you lost money every year. That's what they're going after. And it's very, very difficult. And you better have somebody representing you who knows the business and can point out, yes, we lost money that year, but if the horse hadn't gotten hurt, if the horse had been able to stand its stud, if the horse had been able to do, then everything else could have changed. Because if it had won this, let's say it wins the Arkansas Derby. Well, that horse is worth millions of dollars. Okay. And we can prove that because farms are offering millions of dollars. So even though you may have lost money for the year, here's the potential. Or you own a farm. And while you've lost money in the horse business, the farm is appreciated in value. Now, if you're not in the business, you don't know that. If you're just an attorney or if you're an accountant who doesn't know the business, well, then you look to see the paper thing. But if you're in the business, you can realize, that there is that much more potential for it. And we actually, in a recent case, called a couple of former trainers, Karen McLaughlin, Todd Pletcher, et cetera, Chad Brandt, and said, hey, what potential did this horse have before it got hurt? And then you get all ideas of what the value is. And those are real ways to combat it. Thank you for asking the question, Wisman.
Well, Len Green, we want to thank you so much for being our Gainesway Guest of the Week. And congratulations on Sandman's win in the Arkansas Derby. And good luck in the Kentucky Derby, which is right around the corner.
And good luck in getting me at the top of the TDN.
Hey, there you go.
Be good, guys.
Thanks again, Len.
Thank you. Bye.
Len Green, our guest of the week, brought to you courtesy of Gainesway, which, of course, is the home of Tapit, one of the most influential and breed-shaping stallions of the past half century. He was the sire of Flightline, and Tapit is also the sire of Sandman. After that Arkansas Derby, of course, headed to the Kentucky Derby, America's most dominant sire. Tapit has sired 33 Grade 1 winners. It's had 40 yearlings bring $1 million or more at auction. And his progeny have earned so far over $215 million, the most ever by any North American sire. Tapit still standing strong at Gainesway for a fee of $185,000.
And that leads us right into this week's edition of First Things First, where I caught up with Umberto Rispoli to talk about perhaps a little case of Derby fever. Joined by Umberto Rispoli. Do you have any Derby fever yet with journalism? I'm just really interested.
No, I'm just relaxed. I'm quiet. You know, it's going to be obviously some adrenaline is going to pop up the time then we want to walk to the paddock. And I think this is part of the game. But I'm getting mature enough to hold my emotion and, you know, working on that definitely.
Take me through his last work. It looked like it was just an easy maintenance drill for him.
Yes, actually, even when he works by himself, it's very lazy. He likes more the company, and he starts his work slowly, and then we finish up pretty strong. The key was making a good gallop out as we're gonna go further in the distance. We just, you know, giving the maintenance going on 5 furlong and a very good gallop out, like Michael likes with those type of horses. You know, then they go make an effort to go on a mile and an 8, and he really gallop out pretty strongly.
How does he handle everything on race day? Because there'll be a few more people here on Saturday. We're leading up to the Derby. How is he mentally?
Look, I hope he's gonna handle like he handled it last time. Even if I almost fall off behind the gate, he I don't know, he was scared about the cars then with the ambulance and stuff like that, and he go left and right, and I was grabbing the mane, and I was asking my pony rider, Herbert, forget about me, just hold him. If I fall off, I say, just hold him. But I mean, it's hopefully, you know, it's gonna be even a better schooling for him, and towards going to the Kentucky Derby, they're gonna be 5-6 times more people than here. So honestly, I don't think it's gonna be a concern for him. He's, as I said, it's funny because Brad Free the other morning, he asked me, he said, how are you gonna describe the personality of this horse? I said, you see Michael McCarthy as a human being? This horse is like, he built the horse exactly like him. He goes out there, he does his job, he doesn't want to talk with nobody, and he goes straight to the point. So I think Michael built his own personality as his own horse, his own personality.
That is awesome. I'm just going to call him Michael from now on. Many thanks to Umby. And guys, I thought it was particularly funny that he refers to journalism as Michael, because he says he's just like Michael McCarthy. Doesn't want to talk to anyone, just do his job. All right, let's move on and talk about Santa Anita, what's coming up this weekend. Well, on Friday, we have a 10-race card. We also have a pick 6 carryover, guys, over $100,000 in the kitty pool, expected to exceed $500,000. That will start in race number 5 on Friday. A huge day of racing with the first racing tour on Saturday. We have 12 races. You can come out early and run or walk with me in the 5K. We've got 3 graded stakes on the day. We also have a beer festival. So maybe I'll just take the day up, put my feet up, and drink beer and watch Randy on NBC. It's going to be a terrific day of racing at Santa Anita. We hope you can join us there.
So we move on to what's coming up this weekend, and we'll start with Keeneland, and we're going to talk about the fillies first because the Ashland Stakes has been drawn. We know who's going to be in the Bluegrass, but that race has yet to be drawn. So pardon us if we mess up a little bit on some of the horses, because it's not easy doing this without the past performances. The Ashland's an interesting race for a number of reasons. One, I want to see if Muhima can bounce back off the Honeybee. Len Green was talking about the polls, and TD Thornton had Sandman early on second. I had Muhima at first when I do the Kentucky Oaks poll. Then when she got beat in the Honeybee, I obviously dropped her out of first place, and Good Cheer now is number 1. But, can she rebound off a kind of a lackluster effort in the Honeybee? Brad Cox doesn't do anything wrong anymore. He's got Flavien Prat. I would expect her to run an improved race. And Take Charge Milady's kind of interesting too. She was supposed to run last week in the where was she going to go? She was in the Fantasy, had to scratch a foot issue. She got beat 32 lengths in the Honeybee. But Randy, I think when you were talking about last week, you said that race is a complete throwout. And I agree with you. I actually picked her last week in the Fantasy. And be interesting to see what she does coming back on a layoff. But Randy, who do you like in here, and what are your thoughts?
I think Muhimma's got an edge. I mean, I was a little concerned in her last race in the Honeybee because all of her previous races where she won and ran well, she had the same sort of trip, on the lead, easy pace, and she wasn't going to make the lead in the Honeybee, and she didn't run as well. But I think she and Super Speed are the two that I think are to me, are the leading candidates in here. And I think Take Charge Milady could run okay as well.
I like Super Speed. Rosario, he can be deadly on the front end. By Justify out of an American Pharaoh mare, that's California all day long. I like her for trainer John Sadler, shipping east. If you're wondering about Look Forward, who's cross-entered in the Santa Anita Oaks as well, she will run on Friday for trainer Michael McCarthy, coming off perhaps not a great effort after getting off badly at the start in the Honeybee last out. And she'll get Mario Gutierrez to ride.
And just Mohima, one more thing to mention. The Honeybee, and I thought going in, it was the best field of 3-year-old fillies we had seen all year. What a key race. Won by Quiet Side, who came back, of course, to win. And we just talked about that. And then 5G was second in there. So the winner of the Fantasy and the Florida Oaks, Gulfstream Park Oaks, both came out of the Honeybee, and Mohima was next, running third, beaten 4.5 lengths. Okay, so Saturday is the Bluegrass. And this is, to me, you might want to call this the Redemption Derby.
Yes.
There are so many horses in here that are coming off bad races or something didn't go right. And who's gonna turn things around? Burnham Square, fourth in the Fountain of Youth, is the 9-5 favorite. Caldera beaten 36 lengths in Louisiana Derby. That never discourages Wayne Lucas this time of year. He could have been beaten 360 lengths. He'd be in there. Chancellor McPatrick, second in the Tampa Bay Derby. Not a bad race. One I'm really curious about is East Avenue. He looked so good last year, coming into the Breeders' Cup. Then he was ninth in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and then he didn't run any good at all in the Risen Star, where he was 10th. I talked to Brad Cox after that race. He said he had absolutely no excuse. So let's see what happens to him if he finally wakes up. Owen Almighty won the Tampa Bay Derby. At first, they're saying they weren't going to go to the Kentucky Derby, but sooner or later, Derby fever gets them all, and he's going in the Bluegrass, trying to get ready to see if he can make it to the Kentucky Derby. The other, according to Keeneland's publicity department, the other two horses that are in the race are Render Judgment and River Thames. River Thames needs to run a big race for Todd Pletcher, because if not, he may not have a horse in this year's Kentucky Derby. But Zoe, what do you think? Who's going to win the Redemption Derby?
Yeah, that's a great name for it. You know who needs to ride East Avenue? Johnny B.
Ooh.
That's what he needs. Just send him. It's going to be a great race. I'm just going to sit back and watch it. I've got no idea. Absolutely no clue. I'd love to see Burnham Square go for Ian Wilkes. It'll be really interesting. This is going to be make or break for East Avenue, as far as I'm concerned.
I think because, yeah, I agree. And he's not going to get an easy time on the pace in here, I don't think, because you got Owen Almighty and River Thames in the race as well, who also have some speed. So I think it's going to set up for a closer, and I would think either Chancellor McPatrick or Burnham Square would be the two logical horses. I was a little disappointed in Chancellor McPatrick's last race in the Tampa Bay Derby. I thought he should run a little bit better than that, but he might be set up for a pretty good effort here. The TDN Writers Room, also brought to you by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association, a.k.a. the PHBA. This week, we introduce you to the stallions at Win Oaks Farm in Delta, Pennsylvania. Win Oaks has two new stallions for 2025. This is By Land and Sea. Remember him? Multiple stakes winning track record breaker by Cairo Prince. By Land and Sea stands for $15,000 this year. Here's the multiple stakes winning Baron, who is also new at Win Oaks in 2025. He earned just under $1 million on the track. He's out of the millionaire mare Silmaril. Stands alongside his own sire, Wygelia, Pennsylvania's all-time leading sire. And finally, we have Command Post by Harlan's Holiday. The same sire is Into Mischief, BTW. Command Post out of a champion-producing half-sister to Distorted Humor. There's a pedigree for you. He stands for $2,000. To learn more, you can take a look at the 2025 Stallion and Boarding Farm Directory online at pabred.com, or you can just pick up your phone, call them 610-444-1050.
PA Bred, I think we've built a brand at this point.
It's excitement at every step.
Roses for Deborah just set a new track record.
On average, for the past decade, Pennsylvania paid over $28 million a year in Breeders' Awards, restricted races, and owner bonuses. Plus, PA Bred shine on the world's biggest stage. Just 3 states have bred more Breeders' Cup winners. Learn more at pabred.com.
With some of the fullest fields in the country and quality racing year-round, there's never been a better time to reap the rewards of breeding and racing in Kentucky. Purse money in Kentucky is at an all-time high, as is average purse per race, outpacing California, Florida, and New York. Kentucky Breds. Breed them, raise them, race them. We all win.
Kentucky Breds have flexed their muscles in Grade 1 events to start the year, and of course, Kentucky Breds dominated the most recent series of 100-point Kentucky Derby preps, including Tapit Street and Sandman, and right now, as a matter of fact, to no one's surprise, Kentucky Breds top both the Derby and the Oaks points leaderboard. Sandman and Quiet Side lead the way through the end of March. Sandman now has 129 points after his Arkansas Derby score. Quiet Side, after winning the Fantasy and the Honeybee, is on top of the Oaks standings right now with 168. Kentucky Breds, breed them, raise them, race them. We all win.
So let's move west now to Santa Anita for our continuing saga of Derby prep races, where we have the Santa Anita Derby. And even though this race didn't get a big field, you wouldn't expect it to be. This, to me, is the race of the weekend. Because you have 3 potential stars in here. In Citizen Bull, he needs no introduction. Barnes and Journalism. Journalism is the hot horse right now after beating Barnes in his last effort. But the other 2, Citizen Bull and Barnes, are trained by Baffert. He's won the race 9 times. And he had a hard time separating these horses, but I think Journalism's last race and that big 108 buyer figure were enough that I think he's probably going to be my pick in here. But this is a fun race, and it's going to tell us an awful lot about who are going to be the strong horses in the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, it is a fun race, and Zoe and I were just talking about this off camera, so to speak, and we both think Journalism right now. Sorry if I'm stealing your thunder, Zoe.
That's okay.
Is the number 1 horse for the Kentucky Derby as we speak. Of course, we also thought Sovereignty would run much better than he did in the Florida Derby. So, they got to go out there and do it. But I loved his race in the San Felipe, love his buyer speed figure. I love his post position. He's going to save some ground in the Santa Anita Derby. I think Citizen Bull, because he's drawn inside Barnes, will probably set the pace. Baez is a pretty good horse as well, but to me, it's Journalism.
I like Journalism in here as well. He's come in with a great series of works for Michael McCarthy. It seems like you heard Umberto Rispoli talking about Journalism and how he reminds him of Michael McCarthy. Nothing flashy, just goes around and does his job. Don't want to talk to anyone, no interviews. So he's done everything right. But I will say one thing. Everyone underestimates Citizen Bull. He comes in with good works. Martin Garcia knows him like the back of his hand. He's not missed a single beat all year long. And he should really be the one we're all talking about, but nobody is. He's a little horse that can do. That's Citizen Bull. And Baez are on the outside. Now, he's in desperate need of some points, and we do need to talk about the points have been reducted in this race by 25%. The winner will only get 75 points, which is going to be crucial for the likes of Baeza. Just broke his maiden. He sits at 0. He's a good horse. He's probably going to be the most beautiful horse you see in the paddock on Saturday. Mark my words. He is gorgeous. So he needs to win. Even if you're second, you're getting 37 points. He's on 0. That barely will get him on the bubble. So it's crucial to Baeza to run a winning race on Saturday for John Sheriffs and his team. But I do like Journalism. It's a really good race. It's a smaller field, but I'll tell you, it might be one of the better races that we'll watch all day on Saturday. And let's just not forget that Bob has Rodriguez, who drew the 1 hole on Saturday for the Wood Memorial. That's a very good race as well. It's a full field with some very good horses in that race, guys.
Well, the story of the Wood Memorial over the last couple of decades is that it has been probably the weakest race of all when it comes to producing Kentucky Derby winners. The last Wood Memorial winner to win the Kentucky Derby, you have to go back to 2000 for Fusiachi Pegasus. The last Wood Memorial participant to win the Kentucky Derby back to 03 and Funnyside. And my friend Dave Grenning, he has the numbers. The Funnyside horses that have started in the Wood Memorial are for something astronomical in the Kentucky Derby. But that's not a surprise. I mean, still you got the winter horses are in here. The best horses are obviously in Florida, Arkansas, and California. Zoe, I like Rodriguez as well. Just because he got beat 11 1/4 lengths to journalism. But I think that cadre of horses we were talking about on the West Coast are better, much better than anything that he'll be facing in the Wood Memorial, including Captain Cook, who's the morning line favorite for Rick Dutrow. But he draws the inside, journalism. There's no journalism and no Barnes in this race. Start before that, got beat by Citizen Bull. There's no Citizen Bull in this race. So I think the California form is going to hold up in here.
He gets the blinkers off, up 32% with that blinkers off move. Taking the blinkers off, like we discussed, doesn't mean they're going to take him back. This horse is a baby Huey, right? His birthday is not till May the 20th. He's got a lot to learn, and he's been trying to pack it in a short period of time. So we'll see how he ships. I know he shipped very well. He shipped into Terra Nova's barn there. So he's in there. I like him, Captain Cook. Obviously the horse to beat in here, but then Shug's got his horse in there. What's his name? Statesman. Watch out for Statesman. Low numbers. He comes in off a couple of better than looked efforts at Tampa. And I have a feeling that he might run a big race on Saturday.
No. And how about Shug sticking with Samuel Marin on that horse? He is good for him. He's being loyal to the jock that's won the last two aboard the horse.
Yeah, there's no jocks left. You got some in Dubai. They're all over the place on Saturday.
To me, here's the reason to like Rodriguez. And I agree with you. He wins. He breaks his maiden where he earned his reputation in that really fast maiden race at Santa Anita, where he gets a 100 buyer speed figure. He had the rail that day. They went to the lead, as you would expect. He wins by 7, beats Baeza. Okay, great race for Rodriguez on the front end. Okay, and then he comes back in the Robert B. Lewis, and he draws outside of Citizen Bull. Okay, so Citizen Bull's the 2-year-old champ. Rodriguez is just coming off of a maiden win. Bob's not going to have his 2 horses out there, his 2 speed horses out there going head and head for the lead, especially a maiden graduate hooking his champion. So it's orchestrated so that if he breaks well, which he did, Citizen Bull goes to the lead. And now they got to teach Rodriguez to sit back off the pace a little bit. And he didn't get the best trip. He gets shuffled back. Then next time out, he runs into San Felipe. Again, he's drawn outside of Barnes, the $3.2 million yearling. They're not going to send Barnes and Rodriguez head and head against each other. So again, Rodriguez takes the brunt of it because he's drawn outside Barnes, and they take him back off the pace. And he still, in those 2 races, hasn't run as well as he did when he was on the front end from the rail in his maiden win. Now, finally, he gets clear of Citizen Bull. He gets clear of Barnes. No other Baffert horses in here, kind of like Mataket Road and the Rebel, right? He escapes all that. Boom, goes to the lead, opens up, and runs a good second. I think Rodriguez goes right to the front from the rail, and I think he's the legitimate horse in there. And I think Captain Cook is the other one in there. So I think it's going to come down to those 2.
Zoe, what's going on in Dubai this weekend?
There's an awful lot. We got Randy's favorite horse, Forever Young. We'll be running in the Dubai World Cup. Hitcho's in there, which I thought was extremely interesting. Ushba Tesoro, that 9-year-old horse, he keeps on plugging along. The Nad Al Shima Classic, we'll get to see Rebels Romance. We got Nation's Pride in the Turf. Straight No Chaser. All eyes will be on the Dan Blacker horse who won in Saudi. He's over there running against last year's winner for Bupat Sima in Tuz. That'll be the Golden Shaheen. Interestingly enough, we see Super Chow teaming back up with Chantel Sutherland, who's won 5 of 6 races on Super Chow. Now, Chantel went over to gallop for Boop at SEMA. She did have a couple of rides, one actually resulting in a fall of a rider that she got days for because she dropped the rider. She's obviously served her days and she will get the mount on Super Chow. So that's very interesting to me. And then the UAE Derby, Flood Zone's in there for Brad Cox going over there. It's going to be a good field of racing, and I'll be watching on Saturday morning.
One more thing about the UAE Derby that I'm interested in. Last Saturday in Japan, a horse called Luxor Cafe wrapped up the Japan road to the Kentucky Derby. No verification yet that they're going to bring him over. Visually, he's a son of American Pharaoh. He's bred in Kentucky. He's a half to Regal Glory. He looked really impressive visually. By the clock, not so impressive. There were 7 races last Saturday at Nakayama in Japan, run at 1 1/8 miles, just like Luxor Cafe ran. And 4 of them were run faster than he ran. But there are 3 horses in the UAE Derby that have run against Luxor Cafe in Japan. So it'll be interesting to see if how they run in the UAE, and that might give us a little bit better line on Luxor Cafe.
It's Derby. The UAE Derby. All right, talking of derbies, the first TV work of the week is Citizen Bull, trained by Hall of Famer Bob Baffert. He worked 5 furlongs in company in a swift 58-2, fastest of 42 works at the distance on the day with jockey Juan Hernandez, who of course was subbing for Martin Garcia. That's Citizen Bull on the inside. His workmate is the 4-year-old colt Dothraki, who was timed in 59.40 seconds. Citizen Bull in his last start won the Robert B. Lewis on February the 1st at Santa Anita in his only start this year. Last year, of course, he earned a Clips Award as the 2-year-old champion male after winning both the Grade 1 American Pharaoh at Santa Anita and the Breeders' Cup Juvenile at Del Mar. He has a record of 4 wins from 5 starts and $1.4 million in earnings for owners SF Racing, Starlight Racing, Madacat Stables, Stone Street Stables, et al.
Be a smarter better with First TV, the best horses, with thousands of exclusive morning workouts. All at your fingertips and delivered right into your inbox. Everything you need to be informed. Be smart, bet smart with First TV. All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
So the 3 of us talked about Sandman in the Arkansas Derby, and we analyzed his Arkansas Derby win. And then we talked about Sandman to one of his owners, Len Green. And then we talked about Sandman because he's a Kentucky bred. Now we're going to talk about Sandman again. Why? Because the TDN Writers Room is brought to you by West Point Thoroughbreds. And West Point Thoroughbreds, along with Len Green and John Green, co-owners of Sandman, who, of course, rose to the occasion, as we mentioned in the Arkansas Derby, punched his ticket to Louisville. There are a dozen West Point partners that are involved in Sandman, so they definitely, their Derby dreams are alive right now. West Point will also be in the Wood Memorial. You guys mentioned Statesman, trained by Shug McGahee. That is also a West Point thoroughbred runner.
Can we play it? Hold on, I've got it.
Now, you know, that's what they played at Yankee Stadium every time Mariano Rivera came in the game.
Yeah, I'm with Randy. This is a Mariano Rivera, not a Metallica thing.
Yeah.
But we'll find out. All right, well, that's a wrap on this week's show. I want to thank my co-hosts Zoe Cadman and Randy Moss, our Gainesway Guest of the Week, Len Green, and the backstage people who work so hard to make this show work every week, producers and directors Sue Finley, Katie Petruniak, Anthony LaRocca, and Aaliyah LaRocca. It's going to be a great weekend of racing. Enjoy it, and we'll be back same time, same bat channel next week.